Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
We are going to get serious here.
Okay.
But since we mentioned how a baby was named Placenta in the same hospital where my sister was born back in the 60s, we've gotten so many text messages. One, our friend Patrick Cotter has said his mom arrested a guy named No Smoking.
No
smoking. So, no smoking.
Oh, gosh. These people. Help me.
And Quinn used to know a girl named Remy Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wait, and Mike Scott.
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Basketball player.
Basketball player, Mike. Come on in here.
Yeah, please join us.
What's the basketball player's name?
Corvisier.
Cavassier?
Yeah, Cavassier.
Same spelling?
You know, but there are lists and lists and lists of some would call cool, some would call weird names in college basketball.
Well, I know a guy at Colorado State. So my friend from high school played at Colorado State. Or no, University of Colorado Boulder. Bill Markham. And his teammate, his last name was Guest. So he changed his name to House. So his name is House Guest.
There's a Montana State player named Koala. There's
Koala Bear?
Koala Bad Bear.
Oh, really?
The name. Wow. Bear is the real last name. Koi, as in koi fish. Ocean at California Baptist. Plenty of entertainer names. Colors. Teal. Lavender, which is not a horrible name. Cyan. Spelled correctly, Cyan. Crystal. Tierra.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But it's Tierra Dark. So, lots of queens playing in women's college basketball. Lots of queens, especially for Baylor, Marquette, a few other places. Yeah, there's lots of cool names floating out there on the interwebs.
Creative.
Yeah.
Angel Ramsbottom was somebody that I knew. It's a horrible name.
Just Ramsbottom? Oh, God.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. All right, now we have to get serious.
Yeah, okay. Let's get through.
We try to have fun and bring levity to the program when we can. But the numbers are in, folks, from the CDC, the 2021 suicide rates. And they're not looking good. They're up between 5 to 6% from what they used to be. And, of course, you know, I'm COVID lockdown person, believing that that's the reason for all of the mental health issues that kids have right now. 37% of high school girls have thought about or have tried to commit suicide. 14% of high school boys have thought about or have tried to commit suicide. So with more on that, we welcome to the program Cara Levinson. She's chair and executive board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Illinois chapter. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thanks.
So can you break down these numbers and just, you know, tell us what's going on?
So unfortunately, we had been looking, at the time it was fortunate. There were 2 years of decline in the national suicide rates, significant decline. And unfortunately, from 2020, which was the second year of a decline, where we had 45,979 suicides, it rose. It's a 4% increase in 2021 to 48,183. And of course, that's a statistically significant increase. Some of the interesting and sad facts were there's a significant increase among Blacks, particularly Black youth. There were increases, the highest rates, and historically they're always the highest rates, were among non-Hispanic American Indians or Alaskan Native people. And from 2018 to 2021, it jumped 26% among that population. And the only group that really experienced a decrease was among non-Hispanic whites. But that's hardly something to take joy in, because the numbers across the board are pretty disappointing, I guess I would say. Not unexpected, but surely disappointing. And it only goes to show that, how important mental health is as a public health issue, and we need to be addressing it more than ever.
Well, how do you think COVID lockdowns and locking kids out of government schools and canceling their sports, canceling prom and homecoming and all of that, how do you think that affected the suicide rate?
It's difficult to point to any one factor. For sure, and this is true whether you're, a 60-year-old farmer or a, tween who's going to high school. When you're in isolation, that increases your risk factors for all kinds of, mental disturbances. Whether that results in suicide, of course, is dependent on a whole host of things. Suicide's a pretty complex public health issue.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's not complicated for me. I lost my son in November of 2021. He was 18 years old of suicide. And when I saw
very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. And Amy, I want to thank you for calling me to say, is it okay that we talk about this subject today?
Yeah,
I love talking about it. Everywhere I go, I talk about it, because you just never know who you're saving. Everywhere I go, afterwards, I get people come up to me, my kids are suffering. I don't know what to do. Their behavior is out of control. I don't know what to do. Would you be willing to come and talk to my child? And anytime I do it, I have no problem doing it. But I saw the twinkle in his eye go out when COVID happened. He wasn't able to go out to hang out with his friends. My son was a basketball player. He wasn't able to go out and play basketball.
Right, they shut down all the parks,
They shut down
too.
Everything.
They took the rims down.
Yeah, well, not where I'm at. They didn't.
Oh.
They still.
In my world, they
Yeah.
put a police tape and like
Yeah.
the sirens blared if you went in the park.
Yeah,
but so he
Commie
was taking,
Chicago.
Yeah, so but you believe COVID factors and
It
the
was
mitigations
It was a huge factor.
it
was a huge factor because I've been watching videos of him pre-COVID and the post-COVID. He picked up a lot of weight. He started drinking, and then prior to that, none of that. He was a joyful. I mean, everybody that loved him, that knew him, said that he was the life of the party. He talked so many people out of committed suicide. So many of his friends. You remember at his funeral when I posed the question to all the young people, almost every young person.
Oh yeah, you asked. So Miss Levinson, his son's funeral, which was beautiful. I mean, it felt heavenly and godly. You asked the question in the crowd, and there was a crowd. How many of you thought about suicide, or have tried to commit suicide? And so many people,
even adults
were raising their hands.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What do we do?
Well, I think we have a lot of evidence-based research that has been translated into practical and treatments and paths for people who are struggling with mental illness. We know that more than 90% of people who take their lives have a mental disorder at the time of their death. Yeah. So the first thing to do, of course, is to treat the mental illness. But there are a lot of folks, my daughter died when she was 18, and it certainly was not in connection with any pandemic. She had suffered from depression for 4 years. She was being treated, but this was 16 years ago, and I do think that possibly some of the treatments that have been developed since then might have been effective with her. We'll never know. But,
what are you doing to
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What are you doing to help parents? Because I'm going to tell you, this has been probably the toughest thing I've ever been through in my life. Some days I just don't want to come and face the world. Being on radio has been so cathartic for me. It helps me. It helps me deal with not having to ever see my son again. There are so many parents, especially in Illinois. What are you doing? What are the resources for these parents to go out and say, I need help or my kid needs help? Because I'm not going to lie, I've been searching. You can't find a lot of things that help parents. I'm a part of a lot of suicide groups on Facebook now. Mm-hmm. It has changed me in ways I never thought imaginable. How do we help these parents who are right now suffering, who are listening to this radio show, and they're saying, if I don't do something, my kid's going to do it. My kid's going to attempt suicide.
Yeah. Well, you raise a really good point, and there are definitely there's help out there for parents, and I would certainly say that any parent who has a child who is in treatment should get treatment for themselves, a separate treatment to learn how to evaluate what's being done with their child, because not every mental health professional is the right person for your child.
We know this. Trust me.
Yeah, right.
But it costs money. I mean, seeing a therapist or a counselor or a psychiatrist, it's costly.
There are neighborhoods where sure, the ones who charge $350 an hour are prohibitively expensive, but there are many free clinics or scale, clinics based on a sliding scale for pay. And frankly, it's more important to spend your money, in my mind, on getting mental health care than some other choices that people make. So, and it's not just for people. I think, and this is an issue I had, is people think that it's going to be the person who's the most distressed or distressing. And that's just not true. There are many people who are what I would call high-functioning depressives, very high-functioning. They carry on, and people then, when they take their lives, people say, oh, man, he was the last person I would have expected. Yeah. And that's because they have in their mind that somebody who would take their life is somebody who can't get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And the fact is, if you can't get out of bed, then you probably you're not at high risk for suicide because you simply don't have the energy.
Well, I'll tell you this, a story that I've never really told before. 2016, I actually, try not to get emotional.
It's okay.
2016, I had one of the lowest points in my life when I got fired from the Department of Corrections. And it was Christmas Eve. I went and grabbed my gun out of my car, came in and looked at my wife, told her I loved her, and I pulled the trigger. If it was a brand new gun that I won, it was a Kimber, too. If it was my Glock, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair right now. But because it was my Kimber, it had a secondary safety, and my wife begged me not to shoot and kill myself. The hardest part of all this is it's the same gun that my son shot and killed himself with. And that's what I've been living with for the last year.
Well, I am very, very sorry for your experience, sorry for your pain, sorry for your son's pain. But the fact is that more than 50% of suicides are by firearm. Yeah. It is the most lethal method there is. And, it's only by luck that you did not die.
Yeah.
And this points to, we know there are studies out there that the mere presence of a firearm in the home increases the possibility of suicide by 7-fold.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we learn how to, we do safe storage of, if you have a firearm, store it safely. If people are being treated for mental health issues, health professionals need to talk to them about lethal means.
Yeah.
We need to implement voluntary removal initiatives, community storage options. And, there are other measures. This is not having anything to do with the Second Amendment. This is simply that if you're going to be a responsible firearm owner,
and I was responsible. I understand. I taught my son how to protect our house, and he knew how to get my weapon.
Right,
and he's 18.
Right,
and he's 18.
But of course, but responsible also means, taking care that no one can get at it when they're, down, and that's not in any way to put blame on anyone.
Right.
I
really appreciate
it.
I appreciate you coming on.
It is important to do that safe storage.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on. And another thing that I think a lot of people don't know what to do is when they have someone they love that have gone through it, they don't know how to talk to people. They I've had some people tell me I need to get over it. And it's like,
oh God,
don't ever tell somebody to get over it. Grow a pair of what. And
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like
yeah.
You don't understand. I just lost my son, or I've just lost my husband or my wife or my daughter to suicide. I think a lot of people, what are some of the tips you would give to people of how to converse with people who have suffered one of the greatest losses you can suffer?
Well, in the first place, I mean, you and I both know that there still exists a huge stigma around the whole issue of suicide, the whole issue of mental health. And that's people believe, some people still believe that it has to do with willpower and these people were just weak.
No.
And now you're just continuing to be weak if you show great emotion. And of course, you're going to show great emotion. It's one of the most terrible kinds of death because for many, many people, it possibly could have been prevented. And that's the sticking point. And people are uncomfortable with your pain.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't, it's like when people talk about cancer, there are people who are, let's not talk about that. And it's because it reminds them of their own mortality and they just don't know what to say. So the best thing to say is simply, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. And call that person, let them know that you're thinking about them. And none of us is, unless you've walked in that exact person's shoes, you are just not in a position to say anything judgmental. Yeah. No, they're not going to move on. And I will say that probably you lost, because you chose to lose some friends, and you may have lost some friends because they chose to walk away. But you will also gain friends. Yes. Some of the best people I know are people who are fellow suicide loss survivors.
I concur.
And, we have this terrible sisterhood, terrible brotherhood, but it really can be very helpful to know that so many other people are in the exact same position that you are. And we know if there are 48,000 people who are dying, every year by suicide, that there are a lot of people out there who are missing those folks terribly.
My faith has helped me in so many. My pastor, Randy
he's
Bland,
great.
My pastor, Randy Bland, has been so instrumental in me,
getting out of bed,
becoming that champion again, fighting.
Yeah, well, there are one of the many things that AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, does is run workshops for church leaders on what to do and how to approach the whole issue of suicide. So pastors and other faith leaders can be very helpful, and some aren't necessarily. So, we're there to help educate people, just as we're there to help educate parents about their children before there's a suicide. Unfortunately, often parents don't want to talk about it, as if talking about it makes it go away. It's kind of like sex education, right?
Right.
If we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. And we know that, of course, that's not true.
So, Cara, how can we get more information? Is there a website or a phone number or anything that people,
Absolutely.
who have a teenager or an adult friend who they know something's wrong and they know that they need help?
Yes. Well, for sure. I mean, I'm going to give you our number, but I also think people should reach out to NAMI, NAMI.org. That's the National Association for Mental Illness. But our number, our website is afsp.org.
AFSAP.org.
AFSP.org. And of course, there's a lot of good information on the government website for the Centers for Disease Control.
Okay.
CDC.gov.
Thank you so much. Cara Levinson, she is American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Illinois Board Chairperson. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you. Take care.
She joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. In a recent New York Times piece, guest essayist Heather Kay writes complacently about how her children were, quote, co-parented by the Chinese government, unquote. Ironically,